My name is Jordan Whitaker. I'm 36, a single mom, and the kind of person who knows exactly where every dollar in her account is supposed to go. That's why, on that Friday night, when a lazy voice from my living room called out, "I just used your card for candy," I didn't make a scene. I was tired from work. I shrugged it off, and I told myself I'd check the charge later. Candy is a couple of dollars, right? Later came around midnight when I finally opened my banking app. It wasn't candy. It was concert tickets, gaming gear, designer clothes, and a festival trip I never booked. In less than a week, $8,400 had vanished from my account. The money I'd set aside for my kids' medical bills and a badly needed car repair. My heart didn't explode. It went quiet. I called my mom, voice shaking, laid out the numbers, the screenshots, the dates. She let out this little laugh and said the sentence I will never forget. Kids will be kids. In that moment, I realized nobody was going to protect me or my son except me. So I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I opened my laptop. By 2:10 in the morning, every card, app, and account they had been using with my information was frozen or locked out. At 7:30 a.m., when my brother's card got declined and he finally understood what I'd done, he screamed like I'd burned the house down. I sat at the table with my coffee, and, for the first time in months, I didn't feel guilty at all. If you've ever been told to just let it go because kids will be kids, keep listening, because that night was only the beginning of how I took everything back. When my brother's scream finally died down that morning, I could almost hear the echo of how we ended up under the same roof in the first place. 4 months earlier, when Ryan called me from a parking lot in another state, he sounded broken in a way I wasn't used to. He'd been laid off from a logistics job he thought he'd retire from. Their rent had fallen behind, and the landlord had decided he'd had enough. "Just for a few weeks," he'd said, "until I get back on my feet." I looked around my 3-bedroom place in Denver, thought about the empty third room I'd been using as a home office, and said yes before I even did the math. I moved my 15-year-old son Ethan into my room, shoved my desk into a corner, and told myself this was what family did. At first it felt kind of nice. The house fuller, louder. Ryan joked in the kitchen. His wife Megan talked about all the things she was about to start, and their 19-year-old son Tyler sprawled on the couch with his phone, humming along to music while he scrolled. I work in risk and compliance for a health insurance company, which is just a fancy way of saying I spend all day thinking about what can go wrong if people ignore rules. But at home, I ignored every red flag. The grocery bill doubled, then tripled. The power bill climbed because someone always had the AC blasting or the TV on in every room. Takeout containers started stacking up because cooking was too much after their stressful days of not working. I was the one swiping my card, telling myself it was temporary. Ethan stopped asking if we could drive out of town for the weekend because he knew I'd be working overtime. He lost his room, then his quiet, and a little bit of his mom. Also, I could keep telling myself that I was doing the right thing. Every paycheck, I split my money into neat little buckets in a budgeting app. Mortgage, utilities, Ethan's soccer fees, the tiny emergency fund for the medical stuff I didn't like to think about, and the car that rattled every time I got on the freeway. And then there were the extras that came with having more people under my roof, the DoorDash runs, the streaming subscriptions no one watched, but no one turned off, the bus passes and gas money that never seemed to lead to actual job interviews. Any time I tried to bring it up gently, Ryan would throw an arm around my shoulders and tell me I was overthinking it, and that once he landed the right position, he'd pay me back for everything. Megan would talk about selling things online or starting a side hustle, but somehow her day always ended on the couch with a show and a glass of wine. Tyler didn't even pretend. He slept late played games, watched influencers flex vacations and sneakers, and treated my living room like a content backdrop instead of a place someone else worked to afford. By the time that so-called candy charge turned into $8,400 gone, the truth was ugly but simple. I hadn't just given them a place to stay. I'd given them my boundaries, my savings, and my peace. And they hadn't just taken it. They'd convinced themselves they were entitled to it. I didn't sleep after that. The numbers on the screen were burned into my brain, every line item another reminder of just how little respect there was for the roof over their heads. I watched the minutes crawl past 1 a.m., then I put my phone down and walked out to the living room. The TV was off, but the blue glow from Tyler's phone lit up his face. He had earbuds in and didn't even notice me at first. I didn't say his name. I walked past him, straight down the hall, and knocked on my brother's door. Ryan opened it in a t-shirt and boxers, rubbing his eyes like I'd ruined the best sleep of his life. "What?" he muttered. I held up my phone. I didn't yell. I scrolled through the transactions and laid it out as calmly as I could. These charges, they're on my card. They're not mine. Ticket sites, gaming stores, clothing drops, a festival deposit. Over $8,000, Ryan. He blinked at the screen like it was in another language, then frowned. "You sure it's not some fraud thing? Banks mess up all the time." The word fraud almost made me laugh. I told him the email confirmations were going to accounts that had been logged in from my living room, from my Wi-Fi, from the same iPad Tyler had been using all week. I told him about the candy comment. Ryan sighed, the put-upon big brother sound I knew too well. "He's just a kid, Jordan," he said, voice dropping like we were the ones who had to be quiet. "Kids will be kids. He doesn't think about bills and whatever. You're spiraling." Something in me snapped, but it didn't come out as a scream. It came out as clarity. "He's 19, I said. "That's an adult. And that money was for Ethan's medical stuff and my car. This isn't a prank. It's theft." Ryan rolled his eyes, already retreating. "We'll figure it out in the morning. Don't make it a whole thing right now." Then he closed his door in my face. No promise to talk to his son. No offer to help fix what had been done. Just a shrug, a cliché, and a door. I stood in the hallway for a long second, listening to the muffled sound of whatever video Tyler had moved on to, and realized something that hurt more than the missing money. They did not see me as a person they were hurting. I was a walking account balance. So I went back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed next to Ethan's sleeping form, and opened my laptop. If no one else was going to treat this seriously, I would. I started with my bank, flagging every charge I didn't authorize and opening disputes. Then I went app by app, card by card. I removed my information from food delivery accounts, ride-share profiles, shopping sites. I logged out of everything on shared devices and changed the passwords. I checked the email confirmations and used them to contact customer support on ticket platforms, asked which ones were still pending, which ones could be canceled. The longer I worked, the steadier I felt. By 2:10 a.m., the damage wasn't undone, but the bleeding had stopped. Every point of access they'd casually relied on for months, every invisible pipeline to my money, was frozen. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no broken plates, just clicks, confirmations, and a quiet decision. From this minute on, they didn't get to spend a single cent with my name on it. I closed the laptop, put the phone face down, and lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. In a few hours, the people who thought kids will be kids was an answer we're about to find out what it felt like when the person they'd been using finally said no. I woke up to the sound of my alarm and, for a second, forgot what I'd done. Then my eyes landed on the laptop on my nightstand, and it all came back in one cold, quiet wave. I shut off the alarm before it could wake Ethan, slid out of bed, and went to the kitchen. If the world was going to explode this morning, I was at least going to have coffee in my hand when it did. I had just poured my first cup when it started. A loud, angry, "What the hell?" exploded from the hallway, followed by the thud of bare feet slapping against hardwood. Ryan stormed into the kitchen with his phone in his hand, jaw tight, hair sticking up. "Did you touch the accounts?" he demanded, like I'd broken into his safe. "My card just got declined at the gas station. It says there's some kind of hold on the profile. I couldn't even get coffee." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Good morning to you, too." He jabbed the screen toward me. "This isn't funny, Jordan. I'm already stressed, and now I can't even use the app?" Before I could answer, Megan's voice came from down the hall. "Babe, Instacart just kicked me out. It says payment method invalid. Did the bank freeze everything? Are we hacked?" Then came Tyler, stomping in like the floor had offended him. He was in sweatpants and a hoodie I didn't recognize, phone clutched in his hand. "Okay, what's going on?" he snapped. "My Amazon order disappeared. My tickets app is saying payment failed, and now the festival deposit is pending review. Did someone mess up the Wi-Fi or something?" They all looked at me, three faces lined up across my kitchen like I was tech support instead of the person whose name was on every bill. I set my mug down. "Nothing's wrong with the Wi-Fi," I said. "And no, the bank didn't make a mistake. I did." Ryan frowned. "What does that mean, you did?" "It means," I said, keeping my voice steady, "that after watching over $8,400 disappear from my account without my permission, I froze every way any of you have been using my money." The room went very still. "What $8,400? Megan asked, her voice high and thin. I grabbed my phone from the counter, opened the banking app, and turned the screen so they could see. "These," I said, scrolling. "VIP concert tickets, gaming equipment, clothing, a festival trip. Charges run through accounts and devices in this house, through apps tied to my card, to my name, in less than a week." Tyler's face went from confused to defensive in 2 seconds. "You can't prove that was me?" he said, even though his eyes were darting over every transaction like he recognized them. "Those platforms get hacked all the time." "The email confirmations," I said calmly, "went to an address you log into from my iPad. The delivery addresses are this house. The timestamps line up with when you were sitting on my couch. And one of those nights, you told me you used my card for candy." Ryan threw his hands up. "Okay, but you could have talked to us before you went nuclear, Jordan. We're already under a lot of pressure. You locking everything down just makes all of us miserable. We need access to things too." I stared at him. "No, you don't need access to my emergency fund. You don't need access to the money I've been saving for Ethan's healthcare and the car that gets me to work. You needed to tell your adult son not to steal from his aunt." Megan crossed her arms. "Steal is a big word. You offered to help, remember? You said we were family. Now you're acting like we're some scam artists. You helped yourself to $8,400 of my future," I said. "Family doesn't get a blank check for that." Tyler scoffed. "It's not like you're broke. You've got a good job. You'll make it back. You didn't have to go all psycho and lock everything down over some charges. You're seriously ruining everyone's morning over this?" I let that hang there for a moment, the entitlement thick in the air. Then I picked up my coffee again. "This isn't about ruining your morning, Tyler. This is about the fact that you think kids will be kids is a free pass for grand theft. It's not." Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice like he could intimidate me into backing down. "Undo it," he said. "Call the bank. Fix the apps. Turn it all back on. We'll figure out a way to make it right, but we can't do that if you've shut everything off." I met his eyes. "I'm not turning anything back on. Not today, not tomorrow. If you want to talk about how this gets fixed, we'll have a family conversation tonight after dinner. Until then, if you want coffee, there's a kettle on the stove and regular grocery food in the pantry. You can manage." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Megan muttered something under her breath about me being dramatic as she stalked back down the hall, phone pressed to her ear like she was reporting an emergency. Tyler just glared, then stomped back to the couch, flipping through his apps and swearing every time another "payment declined" notification popped up. For the first time in months, I finished my coffee, while the house buzzed with everyone else's panic instead of my own. They had no idea that this was the gentle part. Tonight, when we sat down at the table, I was going to stop being the safety net they'd been bouncing on and start being the ground. That night, after Ethan finished his homework and disappeared into the tiny corner of my room we now called his space, I asked everyone to meet me at the kitchen table. No TV, no phones, no background noise. Just the four of us and the overhead light humming softly, like it was nervous too. Ryan sat at the end of the table like he was presiding over something important. Megan settled beside him, arms crossed, eyes already shiny with the kind of tears that show up right before an argument. Tyler dropped into the chair across from me, slouched so far down it looked like he was trying to slide under the table. I took a breath. "We're going to talk about what happened," I said. "All of it." Ryan was the first to jump in. "Look, we know you're upset. Anyone would be. But the way you handled it this morning, freezing everything without a warning, embarrassing us like that was over the line, Jordan." I stared at him. "Embarrassing you." He nodded, like that was obviously the part I should focus on. Megan leaned forward. "We went to order groceries and pay for gas, and suddenly we're locked out of everything. Do you have any idea how humiliating that feels? I had to tell the Instacart guy to cancel while my order sat in the cart. We look like we don't have our lives together." "You don't," I said quietly. "That's the point." Her mouth fell open. "Wow. Brutal. I thought we were family." Tyler rolled his eyes. "She's acting like I robbed a bank. It was some purchases. Yeah, I shouldn't have used the card without asking, whatever. But you're acting like I ruined your entire life over some tickets and gear." I let them all talk, let them pile on their feelings until the word pressure and stress and humiliated had been thrown around enough times that they started to repeat themselves, just like they always did when the subject got too close to accountability. When they finally ran out of steam, I folded my hands on the table. "You feel humiliated because, for one day, you got treated the way I've been treated by my bank account for months," I said. "You feel pressure because for the first time, there is a consequence that isn't landing quietly on my shoulders." Ryan sighed. "Here we go." "No," I said. "You haven't actually heard it yet." I pulled out the printed statement I'd brought to the table and slid it toward the middle. "This is my last month of expenses: mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, Ethan's soccer fees, the emergency fund that's supposed to cover the stuff his insurance doesn't, the car repair I've been putting off so I can keep getting to work, and recently, the extra food, extra streaming, extra power, extra rides that came with 3 more adults in my home. I have been covering almost everything." They glanced down at the paper like it might bite them. "Ryan, when you called me from that parking lot, I didn't hesitate. I moved my son out of his room. I gave you keys to my house, my Wi-Fi, my life. I picked up extra shifts so we wouldn't fall behind. Ethan lost his space, his routine, time with me, so you could have a landing pad. That was me being family, not a landlord, not a bank. Family." I looked at Tyler. "And you took that and decided it meant you could help yourself to $8,400 of everything I've been trying to hold together." He flushed and looked away. "You're making it sound way worse than it is," he muttered. "I was stressed, okay? You think it's easy being 19 and broke and watching everyone online have everything? I just wanted to feel normal for once. Those tickets, those clothes, that gear, it makes you feel like you're not drowning. Megan nodded quickly. Exactly. He's been through a lot, Jordan. We all have. The economy is brutal. Jobs are impossible to get, and you're stable. You have a career. You're not scraping by like we are. You locking us out it feels like you care more about money than about us. I laughed once, a short, humorless sound that surprised even me. You know what money is to me right now? I asked. It's Ethan's inhaler. It's the copays for the specialist he has to see. It's the repair that keeps my car from dying on the highway. It's the difference between us having a home and us calling someone from a parking lot asking for a couch. You're right. I am stable. Barely. And your son took that stability and treated it like a shopping spree. Ryan rubbed his face. So what? You want us to leave? Is that where this is going? Because if it is, just say it. I want things to change, I said. And if they don't, then yes, you're going to have to leave. The room went cold. Megan whispered, You wouldn't do that to your own brother. I already moved my kid out of his bedroom for my own brother, I said. I already drained my energy and my time and now my savings. So here's what's happening. I straightened up a little. From now on, no one uses any of my cards, accounts, apps, or logins. Period. If you want a subscription, you pay for it. If you want takeout, you figure out how to cover it. My money is not community property just because we share a last name. Tyler scoffed, but I kept going. Second, everyone here who is over 18 needs to be actively working or job hunting in a real way, not scrolling through listings and sighing. I'm talking about applications, follow-ups, interviews. There are entry-level jobs, service jobs, delivery gigs, retail shifts. They're not glamorous, but they are income. I will not be the only person in this house paying for adults to live like teenagers. Ryan opened his mouth, but I cut him off. And third, I said, voice firm, you have 10 days. 10 days to show me, with action, that you're willing to take responsibility. That means some version of steady work coming in, a plan to pay back what you owe, and proof that you understand that what happened with my account was not a joke. If in 10 days nothing has changed, then we start planning for you to move out. I'll give you the notice you need. I'll even help you look for something you can afford. But this, I gestured around the house, will not be permanent anymore. Silence sat between us. Ryan stared at me like I'd just pulled a mask off and revealed a stranger underneath. Megan blinked hard, trying to summon more tears that just wouldn't come. Tyler shook his head like I'd told him Santa wasn't real. You can't actually mean that, Ryan said finally. We're your family. I do mean it, I said, because being my family is exactly why I let this go on so long. And being my son's mother is exactly why it's going to stop. I pushed back my chair and stood up. You've got 10 days to decide whether you want to be part of this household as adults, or whether you want to keep acting like I'm just the person whose card you use. Either way, I'm done being the only one paying the price. Then I left them at the table with the printed statement still between them, the numbers black and white and undeniable. And for the first time since they'd moved in, I walked down the hall without feeling like I was the one who needed to apologize. The next morning, I didn't wait for them to come to me. Before work, I sat at my laptop and pulled up every job listing within a 20-mile radius that didn't require a degree. Retail, warehouse, coffee shops, grocery stores, delivery drivers, overnight stocking, dishwashing. The kind of work no one dreams about, but the kind that pays actual bills. I printed them out, highlighted a few that matched Ryan's old experience, circled ones that said, no experience required for Tyler, and left the stack in the center of the kitchen table with a pen on top. On a sticky note I wrote, These are places hiring now. I can help with applications tonight. When I got home that evening, the stack was still there. The pen was on the floor. Someone had used the back of one page as a coaster. At dinner, I pointed at the pile. "Did anyone look at these?" I asked. Ryan shrugged without looking up from his plate. "I skimmed," he said. "Most of those pay nothing. We can't live off that." Megan sighed. "And half of them are miles away. Gas isn't free." Tyler picked up one of the pages and held it between two fingers like it smelled bad. "Target? A grocery store? Fast food?" He snorted and dropped it. "I'm not wasting my time clocking in for some minimum wage joke job. That's not my vibe." I stared at him. "Your vibe is living off someone else's emergency fund?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "You're being so dramatic. You act like it's easy out there. One job isn't going to fix everything anyway. So why bother with something that's beneath me?" Beneath him. The phrase dug in like a splinter. "Work isn't beneath you," I said. "Stealing is." He pushed his chair back with a screech. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and be attacked." He stalked off, muttering. Ryan just watched him go, jaw tight, but didn't say a word to stop him. That told me everything I needed to know. On the third day, while they rewatched a show they'd already seen, I took a personal day from work. I woke up, got Ethan off to school, and then quietly walked through the house with a laundry basket. I collected every big-ticket item I knew I hadn't bought. The unopened gaming headset box tucked under the couch, the limited edition sneakers still in their pristine bag, the hoodie with tags attached, the stack of branded boxes shoved into the back of the hall closet like hiding them made them free. I checked email confirmations again, matching receipts and order numbers, tossed anything that could be returned into the basket. Then I loaded it all into my car. At the first electronics store, I set the headset and accessories on the counter and slid over my ID and the order confirmation. The associate scanned everything, frowned at the screen, then nodded. "You're within the return window," she said. "Refund is going back to the original card." I watched the numbers appear on the little screen, watched a small chunk of my emergency fund crawl its way back home. At the sneaker store in the mall, the clerk gave me a look like I'd lost my mind. "You don't want to keep these?" he asked, turning the shoes over in his hands. "People wait in line for hours to get this drop." "I didn't buy them," I said. "And the person who did used money that wasn't theirs." He opened his mouth like he wanted to ask more, then thought better of it and processed the return. Refund after refund, I felt my shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. By the time I was back in my car, I'd recovered more than $5,000. Not everything, but enough to turn those transactions from a total disaster into something survivable. When I pulled into the driveway, Tyler was on the porch, pacing. His face was flushed, his eyes wild in a way I hadn't seen before. "Where were you?" he demanded as I stepped out. "What did you do?" I closed the car door carefully. "I took back what I could," I said. "The headset, the sneakers, the clothes, anything that still had tags and a return policy. Stores are very understanding when the cardholder shows up with proof they didn't authorize the purchase." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. "You can't do that. Those were mine. I ordered them. That's my stuff." "Paid for with my money?" I said. "So no. They were never really yours." He stepped closer, voice rising. "I'm serious. I'm calling the cops. You just stole thousands of dollars of merchandise from me. That's a crime." He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen like he was waiting for me to beg him not to. I didn't. "Go ahead," I said. "When they get here, I'll show them my bank statements, the email receipts, the devices those orders were placed from. And then I'll ask them what they call it when someone uses another person's card without permission to buy luxury items." His mouth opened and closed twice, but no sound came out. For the first time since this started, I saw something other than irritation on his face. I saw fear. You wouldn't, he whispered. You wouldn't actually get me in trouble. I didn't choose any of this, I said. You did. I just chose to stop letting you do it without consequences. Ryan appeared in the doorway then, taking in the scene, the empty laundry basket in my hand. What's going on? He asked. Tyler pointed at me like a 6-year-old tattling. She returned my stuff, all of it. She got the money back. Tell her she can't just do that. Ryan looked at me, then at his son, then at the basket like maybe the right words were hiding in there. Jordan, he said slowly, maybe you could have talked to us before you went out and… I gave you 10 days, I cut in. I told you exactly what needed to happen. I gave you job listings, offered to help with applications, asked you to take responsibility. It's day 3, and the only thing that's happened is more excuses and more TV. I took a breath. The returns are the easy part. You are still living here for free. You are still eating food I pay for, using power I pay for, while complaining that honest work is beneath you. I won't keep funding that. Ryan's jaw clenched. So what now? You just strong-arm us until we do exactly what you say? No, I said. What happens now is up to you. You've got a week left. In that time, you can either start showing me that you're willing to work and pay back what you can, or you can start packing. I've already talked to a friend who manages a coffee shop. She's willing to interview you, Ryan. There's a warehouse hiring night shift 2 bus rides away. Delivery apps are always looking for drivers. There are options. But sitting on my couch draining my resources is not one of them anymore. Tyler shook his head, incredulous. You're heartless, he spat. Seriously, over some stupid money. I felt the words land and slide right off. No, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you write checks in my name. I stepped past them both and went inside, my phone buzzing in my pocket with another refund notification. Each little vibration felt like a piece of myself clicking back into place. They could call me cold, dramatic, heartless, whatever made them feel better. I wasn't interested in their labels anymore. I was interested in results. And if they weren't going to change, then in 7 days, their mailing address was going to. The last week felt like watching a slow-motion car crash I'd already predicted. On day 4, Ryan announced he was going to meet my friend at the coffee shop. He came home with a paper schedule in his hand, complaining the whole time about standing on his feet and being bossed around by some 20-something manager. But he did show up for his first few shifts. Megan signed up for a couple of gig apps, the kind where you shop for other people's groceries, and spent more time complaining about parking than actually accepting orders. Even Tyler filled out one online application for a warehouse job after Ryan yelled at him, then sulked when they didn't call him back within 24 hours. For a minute, I thought maybe the ultimatum had worked. There were a few nights where the TV stayed off because people were actually tired from doing something. The fridge didn't empty quite as fast. I started to hope they wanted this to succeed as much as I did. Then the excuses started. Ryan came home one afternoon and dropped his apron on the counter. I'm not doing this, he said. The pay is crap. The customers are rude and the manager talks to me like I'm some kid. It's not worth it. Megan stopped accepting grocery runs because the tips weren't fair. Tyler decided the warehouse had bad vibes after one orientation email and never showed up. By day 8, we were right back where we'd started. 3 adults sprawled in my living room, scrolling on their phones, complaining about how hard life was while I got dressed for another shift at the job that kept the lights on. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I printed out a short letter and placed it on the table. It laid out the same things I'd already said out loud: the debt, the stolen money, the lack of progress, and the decision that had been made for me. I watched Ryan's eyes move across the page, watched his jaw tighten as he hit the line that said they had 72 hours to make a plan and start moving out. You're really doing this, he said, like he still thought I might back down. Yes, I said. I am. He tried every angle. Guilt, nostalgia, the I'm your big brother card. Megan whispered about how scared she was, how she didn't know where they'd go. Tyler called me names I won't repeat, but in the end, they packed. It wasn't neat or pretty. There were slammed doors, stuffed trash bags, and a pile of things they left behind because they couldn't fit it all into the borrowed pickup they'd managed to secure. On the last day, Ryan hovered in the doorway, keys in his hand. "I never thought you'd choose money over family," he said. I looked past him, at Ethan sitting on the couch, finally alone in his own living room again. "I didn't choose money over family," I said. "I chose stability for my son over chaos for everyone else." Then I took the spare keys back and closed the door. Over the next few weeks, the rest of the fallout trickled in. The bank finished processing my disputes, and I got back a couple more $1,000. Not all of it, but enough that, between the refunds and the chargebacks, I recovered around $7,600. I paid the overdue bills, scheduled the car repair, refilled Ethan's prescriptions without holding my breath at the pharmacy counter. One Saturday, when the house felt strangely, wonderfully quiet, I took Ethan to a movie and bought him popcorn, without checking my balance first. On the way home, he said, "It's nice, just being us again." I felt something unclench in my chest. Through mutual acquaintances and half-overheard conversations, I learned that Ryan's car eventually got repossessed when he couldn't keep up with the payments, that they were bouncing between couches and cheap motels. Tyler ended up working part-time at a fast food place across town. No dramatic arrest, no tragic ending, just real life finally demanding what I'd been covering for months. One night, my phone lit up with Ryan's name. The voicemail was a messy apology, more excuses than ownership, ending with, "I hope you don't hate us." I didn't call back. I didn't hate them. I just wasn't willing to sacrifice my future, or my son's, to protect them from the consequences of their own choices. People love to say kids will be kids like it's a magic spell that erases damage. But kids grow up, and at some point, someone has to stop cleaning up the mess for them. If you're listening to this and thinking about the times you let people walk over you because they were family, consider this: your permission slip to draw a line. Protecting yourself and the people who actually depend on you doesn't make you cold or selfish. It means you finally understand that love without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-destruction. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for them and for you, is to lock the door, close the app, and let adults learn how to stand on their own 2 feet.